Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chart's free webinar series. As most of you know, Chart is the Council of Hotel and Restaurant Trainers, an association of trainers in the hospitality industry. And we have our free webinar series every 2 months. Today, we have Make Time for Success with Melanie Johnson of Rubio's Restaurants. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you for having me, Tara. Hey, thank you everybody for making the time, no pun intended, to join us on this webinar. So I know everybody's time is valuable, and I will actually talk a little bit about that today, and I'm excited to be here with you. First, I just want to say nice to meet you. Here's a picture of me. Sometimes it's hard on a webinar to visualize somebody standing, in front of you, maybe talking to you. So if you can just imagine that I look like this, with my hair all done and dressed nicely, then that'll be good for both of us. And but this is me, a likeness of me. My name is Melanie Johnson. I am the Senior Manager of Training and Program Development at Rubio's Restaurants. So I'm in California and on California time, so it's a little earlier for me than it is for some of you. If you need to reach me, you're welcome to email me. I have my email address here, but it'll also be at the end, so you don't have to scribble it down now. But you're welcome to email me. I'm happy to communicate with anybody after the webinar today. I am on Twitter at LoveTori. I get questions sometimes about this. Tori is my daughter. I didn't know because I wasn't a social media maven when I made my Twitter account that this stays with you the rest of your life. So that's my Twitter address if you want to reach me there. And then I'm also on LinkedIn. So whatever your preference is fine with me. I'm happy to be here today, though, and I'm happy to be facilitating a webinar for Chart. I've been involved with Chart for probably 15 years now through Rubio's Restaurants, and we have several people from Rubio's that you may or may not have met at Chart conferences if you attend those. And so we are happy members of Chart, and I'm happy to be a part of the webinar today. So my first slide here has the title, Will I Learn Anything Today? I guess that's the million-dollar question. That's the question I always ask myself when I'm going to be attending a webinar, whether I am asked to do it asked to attend by a boss or somebody else, or I voluntarily attend. I kind of think, okay, what can I learn from this? And so I want us to do just a little exercise to kind of illustrate what you can learn and what we'll be talking about today. So if you have a paper and pencil handy, I'm going to have you use it. If you don't, you can visualize this exercise. But I'd like you to think of a penny and what a penny looks like, the front side of a penny. I'll give you a hint. It has a president on it. So think about what that looks like. If you have that paper or pencil, draw a picture, just a quick sketch, not a Rembrandt, but a quick sketch of a penny and what is on the front side of a penny. So if you don't have a pencil paper, just think about it. What do you really know about that particular coin? And so I'll give you just a second to think about that, because I know you might have to reach back into your brain. While you're doing it, I'll just ask you some questions about your knowledge of a penny. How many pennies do you think in a day or in a given week you come across or you touch? I know people that have huge Sparkletts bottles of pennies. I know people that save them and turn them in. I know people who hate the penny and who want to get rid of it. But we have tons and tons of pennies, literally tons and tons of pennies that we handle in our society. But can you remember what it looks like? Okay, so I'll show you. This is what it looks like, so you can laugh at yourself if you knew what it was. So it's President Lincoln on the front side of a penny, and it says, "In God we trust" across the top, liberty on that one side, and then the date on the other. In case you thought to yourself, oh, well, this is the new penny, right? This is from 2015, so maybe I didn't remember what the penny looks like. The penny has looked the same since 1909. So in 1909, Teddy Roosevelt introduced the current look of the penny. He did it in 1909 because that was the 100th year of anniversary of President Lincoln's birth, and so he was put on the penny for that reason. A little known fact, President Lincoln was the first person ever on any U.S. currency. And so the penny has that historical value for us. And it's been looking like this for 108 years. So I'm not trying to make you feel bad because I couldn't remember what was on the front of a penny either. But really, when I think about a topic like time management, which is the topic of the webinar today, sometimes I think back to our top question here, there's nothing left for me to learn about this topic. So why would I go to a webinar about time management? I'm here to tell you that there is something to learn about time management, whether you've heard it for the first time today, this topic, or whether you've attended a million seminars about time management. There's always something to learn about it, whether we have never seen a penny before or we've handled it a million times. There are things that maybe you thought were on a penny that weren't, or that you forgot were there. And so hopefully during the short time we have today, I'll review some things with you, maybe if you've heard them before, that will refresh your memory, or you'll hear something new today. Okay. So let's get started then on our topic, Make Time for Success. Okay. It's a funny topic, I think, the title itself, and I took that from a phrase that we say all the time: make time, right? Oh, I can make time for that. I can make time for this. Can you really make time? Okay? Of course not, right? That's kind of a silly notion. Can you really make time? Everybody, you see, gets the same amount of time. Just so you don't have to figure out the math, it's easy math, but if you don't want to do it, you get 168 hours a week. Okay. So how then are some people able to accomplish so much in this 168 hours while other people can't accomplish that, okay, even if we want to or try? So that's really the struggle with time, is that everybody gets the same amount of time, but what you choose to do with the time that you get determines the level of success, quote unquote, that you have. And so that's really what we're going to talk about today, is how to allocate these 168 hours and what are some tools and techniques that you can use in order to get the most out of the time that you have. Okay. So the first one that's probably the most obvious and the bulk of what I'm going to talk about at the beginning part of this webinar is planning and scheduling time, right? Which sounds kind of like you've heard this part a million times. Yeah, I need to plan and I need to schedule, but how really do you go about planning and scheduling so that you can be more effective with your time? So I have a diagram for you. I call it the planning pyramid. For some reason in training, lots of things end up in pyramids, but I like this illustration because pyramids have a base, and the base of the pyramid is really the key to the whole structure of the pyramid. So the triangle, the pyramid in geometry, is one of the strongest shapes that you can create. That's why so many things are shaped like a pyramid. But the point of the pyramid depends on the base of the pyramid. So the base of our time management, the base of our planning success and to achieve success are really these long-term goals that we set. Okay? So I have two things actually on my base here. I have long-term goals and I have short-term goals. So they're interrelated, but they're slightly different. But I want to define those a little bit for you because everybody kind of has their own definition of what a long-term goal is and what a short-term goal is. So I'll tell you, for me, a long-term goal is something that's 1 year or more. And I hear some people say 5 years or more, 10 years or more. Sometimes it's hard for me to think about things 5 years out or 10 years out, but if you have goals like that, you definitely could put them in long-term goals. I have a few. So retirement for me, I won't tell you how old I am, but retirement for me is a long-term goal. It's more than 1 year from now, okay? But it's not 1 year, so more than 1 year. Short-term goals for me are about 6 months to 1 year. Okay, so things I'm going to do this year, it would fall into this short-term goal category. So these are where I start when I'm talking about planning and scheduling my time. Okay. A mistake sometimes that's made, and I point out mistakes kind of all along the way through this webinar because I think that's where I learn the most, is from mistakes that other people have made and I've made myself. But the mistake is that sometimes we leave off this bottom part of the pyramid when we're planning our time. So if I'm going to plan what I'm going to do today, right, which is really up here in this daily tasks, I sometimes don't consider what my short-term and long-term goals are when I'm making this daily plan. And so I really want us to continue, and we will for the next few minutes, to keep going back to short-term and long-term goals to make sure that we're creating plans around short-term and long-term goals in addition to things that happen on the daily task side. When we're determining short-term and long-term goals, it's really vital for us to consider what things we allocate our time to today and how that would look if our time was allocated in a way that we defined as successful in our life. Okay. So I've seen this talked about in several different ways. There's actually a great TED Talk. If you're interested, you can Google that on their website. But it's a great TED Talk about goal setting. And she talks about it in, we think about you writing your Christmas letter at the end of this year. What would that include? What are the kinds of things you want to brag about as achieving for this year? And what would you be putting in that letter? So those are the types of thoughts I want to be having around like what success looks like. And this is how we go about determining what some of our goals might be. So what I have here, I put a list here of some kind of goal categories, some things that you might have goals in achieving. So, you know, it's just got out of January, so maybe you have some New Year's resolutions around health. You have some goals that you set for yourself around health for this year. Maybe you have some career goals that you want to achieve. Maybe you have some education goals. You have some classes or training that you want. Maybe you have a certain amount of money you want to make this year. So you can have goals in various categories here. But I like to think of goal setting in terms of a circle. I call these pies, actually. You end up making a pie graph because it really helps us to visualize this time and that we all have this limited amount of time. Okay? So as much as I like TED Talks and the whole Christmas list idea, I prefer to do this kind of visualization in a circle so that I can be constrained in this way and I can't go on for multiple pages as I would in a Christmas letter. Okay? So what I've done and what I have people in my instructor-led classes do, and so I will recommend it to you, although we won't do it on the webinar today, is to take a circle, take a piece of paper, draw a circle. You're free to do this now if you want, but draw a circle and kind of allocate where you spend your time now. So that's under the how it is circle here, this blue circle on your screen. Where you spend your time now. Right? So since you have a circle and it's only this size, you'll notice that when I make a piece of the pie for health, say, it takes away from the other pieces of pie that I have left. Right? So the bigger my piece for one category, the smaller my pieces have to get for any other categories that I put on here. Also, when I have people do this in my instructor-led classes, I ask them to limit their pie to 5 pieces. So they can only pick 5 pieces, and they have to allocate them onto their circle. And I see them do their circles over and over again because they'll get kind of to their last 2 pieces and they'll be thinking, oh, I want those to be bigger, right? Or those are bigger because this is how it is, right? That needs to be bigger, so I have to make another piece smaller. So you can really see, you know, this pie is 168 hours. I only get that no matter what. I can't ever make that any bigger. My pie is never any bigger. Right? So I have one side of my circle that is my how it is, where I can visually see how I currently spend my time. What do I currently do with my time? So if I were going to do my circle now, I would say, you know, career maybe is 50 or 60% of the time. Okay? Now I want to think about how I'd like it to be. If I could make my life any way I want, how would my time look? What would I be doing? Maybe my career does say 60%. Maybe you love your career and you would do that even if they didn't pay you, right? But maybe not. Maybe you'd want to have more leisure in there. Maybe you'd want to have more family time. So however it is, you'd want to put here how you want it to be. You could either do this as 2 separate circles, or sometimes I do it where it's one circle, one side is how it is, and the other side is how I want it to be. Okay? So the difference between these 2 circles is really where maybe some of your goals should lie. Okay? So if my work time now is 60% of my time, but I really want my leisure time to be 60% of my time, then maybe I need some goals around building wealth, or some goals around retirement planning, or some goals around how I can bridge that gap and work less and spend more time leisure. Okay? So this helps you to determine maybe where you want your goals to be. Okay? So this is a good goal setting tool. I revisit my circles every year, and I actually hang them above my desk so I can kind of keep focus on what I want to be working towards. So kind of a little vision board without all the pictures, but a vision board made up of pies. Okay. So back to our planning pyramid here. We've been talking about the short-term and long-term goals, the 6 months to a year and the 1 year or more. So now we're into this middle section here where we're talking about making a plan. Okay, so here a trap kind of that we fall into is, and I put a red line here on your screen for you, is that sometimes we divide this planning section down to only encompass the short-term and long-term goals, and that we make a division here between that and the daily tasks and actions that we take. So this is a mistake that we make, and I mentioned it earlier when I talked about not including your short and long-term goals into your daily tasks. And so we have this grand plan about, say, retirement, but we actually don't put anything in our daily tasks that would help us to achieve our retirement goals. Or we have this grand plan around career and where we want to be, but we don't put anything in our daily tasks that come from our plan. So I just want to make the illustration that there's really no line here, that daily tasks, when we're making our daily to-do lists, really flow from this plan that come from our short and long-term goals. Okay. So when I'm making a to-do list and I start off longer, so I'll start off on a monthly plan, and then I'll make my daily plan. My daily plan comes from my monthly plan. My monthly plan came from my 6-month plan. My 6-month plan came from my yearly plan. And so I have these goals here at the bottom, at the base of my pyramid, that really drive the plan that I make and the to-do list that I do. So I'm very meticulous and very planful about the tasks that I do and the to-do list, and I want to drive my to-do list and my daily tasks and not have my daily tasks drive my day and have other people really driving my daily tasks. I'm driving those, and they come from my plan and my short and my long-term goals. What helps with this, and what my team, and I'm fortunate to work with a team that is on board with this time management style, is the discussion between what is important versus what is urgent. Okay? The other thing that really helps me is I grew up in a military family, and my mother was very focused on this important versus urgent concept. So she had a phrase that I'm famous for at work now that I'll share with you so you can laugh with me. And she would always tell me when I would come to her with things that came up or things that I forgot, and she would say, just lack of planning on your part does not make it urgent for me. Okay? And so I will just stress to you this idea of important versus urgent is very important, no pun intended there, and really determining where you're going to put your plans and when you're making your daily task list. So I have here a little graph of importance versus urgency. You see importance is on the vertical axis and urgency is on the horizontal. So the bottom left corner here would be things that are low important and low urgency. So things that don't have anything to do with your short and long-term goals. That's my definition of importance, having to drive your short and long-term goals, right? And things that aren't urgent. So maybe like watching the premiere of a TV show tonight. Okay, I don't know, maybe that is super urgent for people or super important, but for me that falls in this lower category here. So it's something that is low important and low urgency. I still might do it, but it's not something that really drives my daily plan or my daily to-do list. If I go over to the right, I'm still on the bottom here, so I'm still in low importance. These are things that don't really influence my short and long-term goals, but I move over into things that are urgent, high urgency. So these are things that come up that have to get done right now, but they're not things that really drive my short and long-term goals. These usually are things that other people give to you. Okay? So your boss comes to you, I need this report right now. Okay, so it's something that's urgent, right? Because it's something that you need to do right now, a stop and drop, if you will, but not something that's really important when it comes to your short and long-term goals. If we move to the top, this is where we move to high important items. So the top left is something that's high importance but low urgency. So I mentioned retirement earlier, or maybe getting a college degree or some kind of certification. Maybe it's really important to your short and long-term goals, but it's not something that you have to do by tomorrow. It's not something that is really urgent and that you need to do a stop and drop for, but it's something that is very important to you. Okay. Then if you move to the right on this graph, the top right corner, then that is something that is high importance and high urgency. So these are things that are really important to you. They really drive your short and long-term goals, and they're really urgent. You need to do them right now. Okay. So think about this when you're thinking about your plan, and think about where you would want to live the most often. Which quadrant of this graph here you would want to be living in? For sure, I want to live at the top, right? I want to be living in doing things, the majority of tasks that are really important. Things that drive my short and long-term goals, that have a high impact, that have importance. And when I say importance, I mean importance to me and my goals, okay? And I for sure would much prefer to live in this low urgency box than the high urgency box. Now, I'm a person that really lives off of stress, and stress is a motivator for me, but I also know what stress does to me, and it's not always super fun to be stressed out. And that top right box is stressed out, okay? Because not only are these things important, but they're urgent. So you really value them because they're important, and you have to do them right now, so you're stressed out about them all the time. Okay? The bottom right box is stressful too, right? Because that's high urgency, but they're not really important to you, so they're not as stressful as this top right box. So if I had my druthers, I'd rather live in this top left box where things are important and they have low urgency. This is what planning gives to you. Okay? A lot of times you can look at the items on your list that are urgent and notice that their urgency comes from planning or a lack of planning or a lack of anticipation. I don't want to say we don't plan, but sometimes we don't, or we don't take the time to anticipate things that are going to happen. And so they become urgent because of that lack of planning. That's where my mother's phrase comes from, right? A lack of planning on your part does not make it urgent for me. So the urgencies can come from your own lack of planning or from somebody else's lack of planning. But regardless, the urgency causes stress and makes us not want to live on that side. Okay? So planning, that's the integral part to planning. Okay. So I mentioned this already, but how do you determine when something's important? Okay? I usually ask myself these questions, right? What is it worth? Okay? And I don't mean what's it worth monetarily necessarily. What's it worth to you? Is it worth giving something up? Think about the pies that we talked about earlier. If I dedicate time to this, if I give time to this, I'm going to have to give up something else. So I'm always very conscious of this. I have a family, and that's important to me. So I always say to myself, if I'm spending time doing this work project, I'm not spending time doing something else, usually something to do with my family. Is it worth it? Is there value there? And so asking yourself that question could help you determine if it's important or not. What is your purpose? So thinking back to your short and long-term goals, a lot of people here will write a purpose statement or a mission statement for themselves. That's not really part of this webinar, and I don't have time to go into that, but I would encourage that, is writing your purpose statement, your mission statement. What is your purpose at the job that you do or in your personal life? What is your purpose or what is your mission, and is it something that affects that? Okay. And I do recommend that you write down either what your purpose is or your short and long-term goals. Somehow that action of writing things down really makes it more concrete and helps us to turn it from something that is a dream into something that's actually a goal that we can make a plan around. So writing it down, and it seems old-fashioned today, right? I'm going to take a pen and paper and actually write something, but that's important. And you could type it if you wanted to. But actually putting it down in words is an important part of determining whether or not it's important. Okay. And this brings me to this tyranny of the urgent. So sometimes we get in a spot where we find ourselves not working on really anything that is important. And I don't mean that important doesn't mean it's not impactful. It just means it's not your short and long-term goals, because we get ruled by things that come up that are urgent. Okay. So we're going to talk about in a second some ways to deal with barriers to success, and one of them is dealing with this urgent. But the tyranny of the urgent is a very real issue, and so we'll talk about some strategies to deal with things that kind of are always urgent, and making sure that we can deal with them effectively. I'll tell you right now, in the planning and scheduling phase, you should always leave time for things to come up. Right? I'm one of those people. I'm a planning person, and so I will plan out like every minute of my day, and that doesn't serve me sometimes because things happen that can't be planned. And when that happens, right, my pie is only so big, so I have to have other things that drop off. And then I miss deadlines, and I miss doing things that are important, because usually it's the important things that drop off, because my high important, low urgent items don't have to happen today, and those keep getting pushed aside. So making sure that you plan time for urgent things that maybe you can't anticipate. All right, so this is my slide for this idea of intensity. So why is it so important to keep the important things top of mind and to really be working towards them? So this is a picture of a cheetah, in case you didn't know, chasing a gazelle, which is its favorite food. In the wild, the cheetah is the fastest land animal. So they've been clocked at up to 71 miles an hour. So that's pretty fast. It's about as fast as I drive on the freeway here in California, so 70 miles an hour. About half the time that the cheetah is running, it looks like this. If you notice on this picture here, none of the cheetah's paws are on the ground. So the back paws just left the ground. So about half the time that it's running, its paws, all 4 feet, are not on the ground. Okay? So it's very fast, and it's made to run. Its whole body is designed for that. It might surprise you then to know that in the wild, cheetahs that are chasing after these little gazelle only catch the gazelle about half the time. Okay? About 50% of the time do they catch the gazelle. Why is that? Okay. So when you think about this race here, right, a quote-unquote race that the cheetah's running with the gazelle, who has more in the game, more skin in the game, literally, right? The gazelle does, right? If somebody loses here, the gazelle loses more. And so the winning of this race is more important to the gazelle than it is to the cheetah. The cheetah could run another race, but the gazelle's not going to get another chance if he loses. And so the idea of being intense about something that is important to you can help to make sure that you can accomplish it. This is why I have those circles and I put them above my desk so that I can stay focused on them, because intensity helps us to reach our goals and to make sure that we are protective of our time that we're allocating to those goals. Okay? So think about yourself as a cheetah. This is also the reason if I do a story that is about us, you know, why you can get so much done, you know, the day before you go on vacation. We're maybe a little bit more focused because we know we're going to be out, that we can get a lot accomplished in a short amount of time because we're very intense and very focused on what we have to accomplish during that time. So along with planning and scheduling, you need to have a tool. Right? And so sometimes people are disappointed that I'm not going to tell you what tool I recommend. So this is not a seminar about a certain day planner or a certain time management tool. But I will tell you that you need a tool, and it can be any tool. And I don't care if it's as untech as a Post-it note or a yellow pad, or as high-tech as using your Outlook calendar or your smartphone. But everybody needs to have a tool. It's kind of surprising to me sometimes how many people don't have a time management tool and kind of just remember things. I actually am to a point where I think I'm addicted to my time management tool. I don't know where I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to be doing without my time management tool. If people want to know, I use Outlook, which integrates with my phone, but everything has to be in there. I'll tell you a quick story that when I first started using Outlook, I hated Outlook, and I was only made to do it because other people can view your calendar, and that way people would know where I was for work. But when I started using it, then that's when I really loved it, and now I think I'm a little codependent on it. But again, I don't care which tool that you use, but you need to pick a tool. So my first word of wisdom about this is to pick a system and pick a system that works for you. So that's why I won't tell you what system to use. Different systems work for different people. Ask around your friends and find one that they would recommend and see if that works for you. But if it doesn't work for you, pick a different one. The point of the system is that it needs to work. I will tell you, though, the point of me telling you my Outlook story is that it's not going to work for you for the first week that you use it. It may not even work for you the second week that you use it. So like anything, you need to actually use it and use it for a little while. I would say like a month before you decide if that system is a system that works for you or not. So give us the system that you pick a chance, but pick a system and then pick a system that works for you. And maybe there should be 2 words of wisdom. Pick a system and then pick one that works. Okay? My second word of wisdom is treat your system like you do your phone. Okay? So if you're like me, if I don't have my phone, I feel naked and I'm completely lost. And it's not only because my calendar is in there, but everything is in my phone. I was at the office yesterday and I couldn't find my phone and I freaked out for a few minutes. The irony was I found my phone and there was an article, you can find it yesterday on CNN if you want, about what to do if you lose your phone. But losing your phone is something that most people can relate to as a stressful situation. Your time management system should be that same way. So maybe your time management system is your phone, but if it's not, then make sure you always have your time management system with you. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time using it. Okay? So if I go to the dentist, I have my time management system with me because they're going to want to make my next appointment, and I need to make sure that the appointment that I make is one that I can actually keep. I don't want them to make an appointment so that I can call them later because I found out my appointment conflicts with something else and I have to take time to fix it. I want to make it once, put it in the system once, have it be there, and that's the appointment I'm going to keep. So treat it like you do your phone. Okay? At Rubio's, we do something called tip top every day with our people. So this is a common restaurant technique. We talk into position and talk out of position, everyone that works on our shift. And I'm going to recommend as part of planning and scheduling that you tip and top yourself every day. Okay? So this is how I do it. Okay? I spend 15 minutes at the start of the day to make my to-do list and to plan and organize my day. So I have 15 minutes to organize myself. Then I have time during that time to compare my list that I made to my short and long-term goals to make sure I have some activities in there that are going to help me to move towards them. Okay? I have 15 minutes in the morning then too that I do simple tasks, right? This is like my email time. And these are simple emails. This is not the long paragraph email. I have 15 minutes, right? So I'm spending 30 minutes in the morning to do quick things, knock them out, organize my day, make my to-do list, and set myself up. Then I do that same thing at the end of the day. I top myself. For 15 minutes, I review my list, and I have 15 more minutes to knock out quick tasks. And I keep doing that over and over. So here, some people are saying, wow, you know what? You spend 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at the end of the day. You spend a whole hour like organizing yourself for the day. I do. And I spend a whole hour organizing myself for the day so that the rest of my hours can be more impactful and planned. Also, I don't do these other things that are listed here at other times during the day. So I don't make a to-do list in the middle of the day. I always do at the beginning of the day, and that's my to-do list for the day. I don't do my quick emails at any other time. I check my email in the morning, and I check my email at the end of the day. I have times during the day that I also check email, but I don't respond to quick emails other than the 15 minutes in the morning or the 15 minutes at the end of the day. Okay. So I'm very planful about when I do those things so that I can minimize my interruptions and stay focused on my to-do list. Okay. So my words of wisdom here, tip-top yourself every day. Okay. And make sure that you're scheduling your important tasks and that you're scheduling your important tasks first. Okay. This means that you must prioritize your tasks. Okay. So things that are important are things that should go in your plan and on your schedule first, not last, right? Just because they're not urgent doesn't mean they shouldn't go first. And that way you make sure you have time for them. Because those, I guarantee you, are the first things that you put off because they're not urgent and you sacrifice them for other things. So we're talking about not just making time, but making time for success. So we want to make sure that we can prioritize our important tasks and put those on the schedule first. I don't mean first like they have to happen first thing in the morning, but I put them into my schedule first so that I schedule the things that are not as important around my important things. Okay. And then this switches my phraseology, my wording. When people ask me if I have time for something, I don't say I don't have time. I do have time, right? I have 168 hours, the same amount of time everybody has. But I can say it's not a priority for me right now. Right? So yes, I have time to do that. So sometimes somebody will come up and say, do you have time to do this? Yes, I have just as much time as everybody to do that, but it's not a priority for me now. And I'm not saying that in a way to sound mean or in a way that would make me, sound like a jerk, I guess. It's just not a priority. It's not on my priority list. I can make it a priority if I choose to, but if it's not on my list right now, it's not on my priority list right now, unless it's urgent and I have to do it right now, it's not going to end up on my list. So I just want to quickly go through some barriers to success. I want to leave some time for questions at the end, but I want to share with you a couple techniques for 3 barriers that I come across that really affect my time management. Interruptions, we talked about this briefly already, but I want to talk about it for just a second. Perfectionism, and then lastly, and it is intended that it's last, procrastination. Okay. So interruptions, I'll just say first, keep track of your interruptions. Say what interrupts you all the time, and then ask yourself, what could you do about them? Okay. So just quickly, I'll tell you, we just moved our corporate office to a new facility, and it's one of those open offices. So everybody has really no office. We all have cubicles, and they're really low, so everybody can talk to everybody. I guess it's supposed to facilitate collaboration and working, but really what it facilitates is interruptions. And so it's a difficult environment sometimes to work in. So really we had to think about, okay, what kinds of things keep interrupting us, and how can we fix that? So if I'm working on something that I can't be interrupted, I wear a pair of headphones. And I don't wear those little iPhone ones that go in my ears. I wear a big set of ones, like those old-fashioned ones you use for gaming. So people know it's a physical barrier that I'm doing something, and you can't just walk by and casually say something to me. You really have to mean to interrupt me in order to interrupt me. I don't keep those on all the time. I'm not antisocial, but I keep them on when I'm doing something that is important and I can't be interrupted when I do it. So that's what I mean by asking yourself, how could I deal with these interruptions? Maybe you schedule time that I can be interrupted, right? And then those are the times I don't wear my headphones, right? So I know there's going to be a collective gasp with everybody, but I also recommend you turn off notifications. Every time you're interrupted, you have to look at the interruption, deal with it, come back, refocus again. It takes a little bit of time and focus away. So if you have your email dings every time you get a message, turn that off. If you have all these apps on your phone that give you notifications when you get a new like on Facebook, or somebody's Snapchatting you, or there's a LinkedIn comment, or all those notifications, turn them off. And make time in your schedule to check those things so that you can keep on top of them, but you don't have to know about them the minute that they happen. And that way you're not interrupted. You're not distracted by those things. Okay? And then I'm going to say, when you have a task that comes across your desk, that you only touch it one time and you decide what to do with it. So I gave you this example earlier with my dentist appointment, right? I have my time management system with me so I can make the appointment and I know I can keep it and I don't have to reschedule. I only touch it one time. So I can delay it, right, which is what I do with things in my schedule if they're not urgent, right? I put them in my schedule and I don't even think about them until that time. I can say no. For sure, you can. Believe me, you can. I can give it to somebody else, or I can do it right now, which I only do for important and urgent tasks. So things that are urgent, I might do now, but otherwise it needs to go into my schedule. Okay? But you really need to touch it only one time. So if I'm opening my mail, okay, I don't open it until I can do something with everything. Okay? And if it's something that's really important and not urgent, I'll file it to where it needs to go, to where I'm going to actually deal with it. Okay? I don't read it, think about it, then file it, and then go back and then take it out when I'm going to deal with it. And so now I've dealt with it twice. Right? And I think about mail the same way I think about any task that comes my way. I'm only touching it one time, and I'm only dealing with it one time. And it's for my own sanity and to manage my time. Okay. Secondly, I'll tell you, if you don't have time to do it right, don't do it now. Really, this should have an addendum and say, don't do it now because you'll just have to do it again. Okay? So if you don't have time to do it right, don't do it now so that you don't have to do it twice. Okay? So if you don't have time to do it right, put it in your schedule when you will have time to do it right so that you can only do it one time. Okay? And then that brings me to perfectionism. Okay? I am a perfectionist. I think our society has moved towards perfectionism. When you look at things like Pinterest and the competitive nature of people, You think that you see that how people want to do things better and bigger and more perfect, and you get caught up in that, and sometimes you forget when good enough is good enough. And really, if I spend more time on this to make it more perfect, is it going to make it different in any way? Is it going to make more of an impact? Right? So I really had to take a deep breath sometimes and think, when is good enough good enough? It's okay, right? And it helps me to refer back to my purpose. So if what I'm working on doesn't have to do with my purpose, my short and long-term goals, then maybe good enough is good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's not important. And then to be aware of the value of your time, asking yourself that question, is it worth it? Or kind of better yet, could someone else do it? Right? What if somebody else did it? Then it could still be done and it would be good enough and I don't have to do it at all. Right? So dealing with perfectionism is sometimes just a matter of thinking about it and asking yourself questions. As far as having somebody else do it, I love this quote from Theodore Roosevelt. The best leader is the one with sense enough to pick a good team, to do what is needed, and self-restraint enough to keep from meddling with them while they do it. So sometimes perfectionists, and I'm this way, see their team doing something, and then they still have to get involved and do it because it's not quite how they would do it, but realize that different is okay and good enough is okay. Okay? And that really has to do with how we delegate. So when we delegate carefully and use delegation to develop our team members, then it really can help us to improve our productivity. And we really need to start looking at delegation as a gift that we give to people instead of as punishment for people or a way to get rid of things off of our plate. Okay? So delegation is a gift. When you're giving somebody tasks that are routine to you but new for them, then it's a gift. When you're giving someone a task that would develop them but doesn't develop you, then that's a gift. And when you're giving tasks that would challenge someone else to them, but they're no longer a challenge to you, it's a gift. Okay. And I'm going to move to here. Okay. So some cautions for delegating. Make sure you delegate fully, right? So you're not going back and doing a task. If someone is ready to take it, make sure you actually give it to them. But you're still monitoring performance and making sure that you're helping them to avoid mistakes, okay? And I usually pick a technique, and what these two techniques are is if someone's not quite ready, then I'll give them a task, but I ask them to tell me what they're going to do before they take action. That's this first one here. Or if somebody's completely ready, I tell them to go do it and just tell me what you did, right? Just make sure you don't confuse these two, right? Because then you'll have people that fail and tell you how they failed because they weren't quite ready. So there's whole books on delegation. I don't want to get into how to do it here, but delegation is your friend when it comes to time management. Okay? If it's so great, then why don't we do it? And I put kind of some reasons here, right? We don't want to dump on people. We can do it better. It's faster if I do it. They can't manage it. I want to do it. I like it. Okay? I just want to tell you that if you don't delegate, then it's really your issue and not the issue of your team. It's really an issue of you not wanting to let go of things, but it's a huge technique to manage your time. Okay? I recommend a book here. The 1 Minute Manager is a classic management book, but they have kind of an addendum book to it, The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. I recommend it when it comes to delegation. It talks about how to encourage solutions, how to be somebody who delegates, but also how to be somebody that doesn't take on problems of people, which is another an issue when it comes to managing your time, taking on other people's problems. Okay, so I recommend that book. My words of wisdom, it's okay to just say no, right? Just do it. Sometimes people have problems saying no, but just do it. For your own sanity and for your to-do list sanity, saying no is a great technique. Okay? Procrastination. The first technique is my favorite technique. I call it the whale technique because if you read Shel Silverstein, he has a story in one of his books, I think it's Where the Sidewalk Ends, about Melinda May who eats a whale. How does she eat a whale? She takes one bite at a time. So if I have this huge whale of a project, right, and that's usually why I procrastinate, it's a huge whale of a project, just getting started a lot of times will help me to finish. So I just say, okay, what's one thing I can do to start? Take the first bite, and it helps you to finish. Okay? The second thing you can do is this pros cons list, right? This is classic, benefits versus unpleasantness, pros versus cons. If you can assess the benefits versus the unpleasantness, then that can help you to decide, okay, I really want to do this because it has a lot of benefits and I don't like these things on the unpleasant side if I don't do it. Okay? And then the last thing I'll recommend is there's a great book on procrastination. It's called Eat That Frog. The picture of it's here by Brian Tracy. And it's based on a kind of a saying. It's a Chinese saying that if you eat a frog the first thing in the morning, then that'll be the worst thing you have to do that day, and the rest of your day you can look forward to. So I sometimes will procrastinate things that are unpleasant, right? Schedule them first. Right? Do your unpleasant thing first thing in the morning, right when you start, and then you have the rest of your day to look forward to, and it's kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel. If you can do that unpleasant thing first, then you're not thinking about it all day, having it hang over your head all day. This book has other techniques too, but that's where that title comes from, and I recommend that book. So that's my wisdom in summary here, right? So first, pick a system that works for you. Make sure you treat your system like you do your phone. Keep it with you. Tip-top yourself every day. Take that half hour in the morning, half hour at the end of the day. Turn off notifications. It can be done. Touch every piece of paper or every task only one time, which means that if you don't have time to do it right, don't do it now. And lastly, it's okay to just say no. Just do it. Just say no. It's okay. Really, time is the only capital that any human being has and the only thing that he can't afford to lose. When you realize the value of your time, that enables you to make time for success. Okay. So once again, I'm Melanie. Here's my picture if you forgot what I look like. You can reach me in these 3 ways. But I want to leave a few minutes. We have about 10 minutes here, and so I wanted to leave some time for questions that anybody has. So if you have questions, there's a question option in your GoToWebinar, and so feel free to post questions there, and I'm happy to take questions. I think Tara's going to come on and help us to facilitate answering questions.
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. Yeah, I have a couple of questions here, and if anyone has any others, they can just add them in that little question box. The first question was, can your purpose change?
Yes, and so I reevaluate my purpose yearly as kind of my yearly plan when I do those pies, and so I definitely think that your purpose can change. My purpose has changed a few times. It hasn't changed drastically, but I've kind of massaged it to be a little bit different. And so I would say for sure your purpose can change, and don't be afraid to change your purpose.
Okay, the second question I have is, how do you handle a task that's urgent for someone else but not for you?
Yes, so typically this might come up, say, from, in my situation, my boss or my family, and you don't want to always say no, because we want to be helpful. We're trainers, and just because something is not urgent for me or important for me doesn't mean I shouldn't try to do it for people. And so really my best technique for that is to make sure you have time in your daily plan for things that come up that are unexpected. Don't be scheduled so tight that you can't do things for other people and you can't fit in things like that. So I've made the mistake in the past of being so tight on my schedule, and then I end up having to not do things that are important because I want to be in that role of helping people. And so I make time for that because I guess it is important for me to be helpful. And so I plan for that.
Okay, and the last question we have is, how can you help your team members develop time management skills?
Okay, so the biggest thing that I do on my team is to be a good role model for time management. And so that's why I'm not afraid to say no or to use that phrase. It's really not a priority for me. Can I fit it in somewhere else? So I try to role model good time management so that they can role model it too. And so if I see somebody that is working on my team that is having their time eaten away by somebody else or another department, or they're not using good time management skills, then I can help to coach them in that. But they've also seen me do it. So they see me do it in a way that is professional, in a way that is helpful, and so they can see how that looks because I've used that with them. The first couple times you do it, especially if you're not someone who does it readily now. So the first times you say no when you always said yes before are the hardest. But if you say, no, I can't do it right now, it's not a priority for today, but can I do it tomorrow? Sometimes that'll soften it a little bit. But being that good role model and being able to then coach the time management skills, I think is really important, and that can help your team.
Okay, I did get two more questions. One is any suggestions on when you have to have two phones, one for work and one for personal, and you have to juggle two planning systems?
Oh, geez. Yes. So I've come across that a few times, and like, what a headache, right? So I would say if you can put them into one somewhere, that's really helpful. So that's why I like Outlook, and I like, on my smartphone, I can have two different calendars, or I can have at least two different color codings of calendars. I only live one life, and so whether it's a work calendar or a personal calendar, it's really hard for me to have them separate because I don't work a typical 9-to-5 job. So I need to have my personal stuff and my work stuff commingled. So I do have a couple different planning systems. I use Outlook and I use my phone, but I also have, the calendar on my fridge. But somewhere, all those calendars for me have to live in one place, and then I can push them out to those other planning systems, if that makes sense. So I have one like central master calendar, and then if I need to put stuff on my fridge for home, right, then I could take it from the master calendar. If I need to put something in a work calendar, I could take it from the master calendar. So it's a little more time there, but I would go crazy if I didn't have one central master calendar that kept everything just for my own self, because I only have, like I said, that one life. So my whole life has to live in one place. So that's what I would recommend. Have one master calendar and then push out to the other separate calendars.
Okay, and I think that's it. We're running out of time, and the last one was a comment anyway. Melanie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And everyone else, if you'd like to see any more of Chart's free webinars, there's a library of them online, and this one will also be available online later today.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye.